It's going to be one of those days. Hello, everybody. I hope all of you are doing well as we sort of kick off what is going to be, I hope, a really fantastic... God, I'm praying for a good discussion. I'm praying for a good, lively, solid back and forth discussion that would make my fucking day. I am nervous about it because you never quite know. I haven't seen Michael actually deal with people who like actually have disagreements with him, so you never know what someone's like style is. There tends to be again, I've watched Michael Weisskopf for a while. I haven't watched everything. I don't know, like, well, you know, every time he does this with his eye, it means like I'm not doing poker style analysis, but I've not seen him be with anyone who's not generally conciliatory, like trying to find middle ground or compromise positions and things like that instead of tarrying with the ideas and the concepts directly. I'm quiet. I'm quiet. Oh, good Lord. Why would that be the case? My. My. That's fascinating. One moment. Let me see. That's all correct there. What am do I have filters on this? Oh, I might be doing it. Get rid of that for now. And that didn't improve that. One second. This will be fun. This wasn't a problem a moment ago. I was peeking out, actually, which is interesting. Thank you for letting me know. One moment. Bum. Okay. I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything. I opened sound properties on control panel. Did that fix it? Yeah, see, exactly. I don't know what I did. I didn't do anything. I fucking hate Windows. Is that fair? Can I just say I hate fucking Windows? It's Windows 11. Like, there's nothing. I don't think there's anything I can do. Like, I didn't do anything. I opened sound system properties, and when that opened, it peaked. And that doesn't make any fucking sense to me at all. Linux nerd identified. Oh, you fucking... I wish I was a Linux nerd these days. I'm here's how embarrassing I am as a person now. Like this, I just am like, okay, cool. I've got to turn in my fucking nerd card. I have a Ubuntu box in the garage that's running the latest Ubuntu. I have a website or two I run off of. It's like my web service. I'm trying to get my email on there, save a few dollars, and get off of Google's teat as it is. But I needed to get into a very particular folder, and I I opened up Terminal and I could not for the life of me. My brain wouldn't type ls. Like I for some reason I just kept typing dir, like window. Like my brain couldn't make the switch, and I called a friend of mine to ask him to remind me what the fucking thing to do was, and he made fun of me for a while. It happens. It was a bad brain fart. I'm sure it happens to everybody, but it was like my brain couldn't. I just couldn't. It was fucking weird. It was very strange. My brain just didn't make the move. And that happened to me for a while there. I went Unix, Linux, Mac, and I stopped using Windows for like 2004 to 2009. I like refused to touch Windows. I had a Windows box for video games basically. And when I started getting back in and starting to use PowerShell again and doing things on Windows, my brain couldn't make it. Like, it happens. You know, what are you going to do? But, God damn. Like, you just get out of practice. I haven't like been in a hard code environment where like I had to, you know, actually deal with code writing for hours a day. And I've been doing that again lately. So I pulled up Vim. I hadn't used Vim in forever. And I realized, it is not like riding a bike. You're done. If you don't use it for like, that was like fucking 15 years, you're not going to ever again. Like you're done. You can't relearn Vim as an old person, I guess. It's very sad. It's very sad. It's very sad. What are you going to do though? What are you going to do? Well, with any luck, what you're going to end up doing is, in about 20 minutes, I'm expecting to get a link from Michael to go on his restream, and we'll be setting that up. Until then, I kind of want to talk about postmodernism, get myself in that vibe of things, right? Because I should get ready. I should prep, because it's one of the things that's really tough about how people talk about postmodernism. And Michael did the same thing a lot of people do. And he was referring to videos that were far worse. Like, again, not even worth talking about, where it's like, who killed postmodernism? And it's like, the fundamental misunderstanding of what postmodernism is for everyone is that it's this. In Capital, the nature of the market system, and whether you're reading Marx alone, Deleuze and Guattari alone, Lyotard, Foucault, everyone talks about how capital necessarily changes how we sort of deal with the world. Changes how we handle things. It changes how things are valued. It changes how labor works. It changes interactions of people. It destroys old social codes to make room for more interesting and malleable norms, axiomatics. But capital does this at a global level. But, you know, when Marx was going on about it, it was sort of a oncoming thing. And he spoke of it as such, as like this growing system, this thing that was changing. It's really capitalism slowly changes it all. And for Jameson, who wrote this in the 80s, he basically, I don't know how to put it, he made if there's a diagnosis he made, it's that everything else but capitalism's dead. That capital has now saturated every part of everything that people do in every single way. It's intimately part of our entire existence. That intimate part of our existence is the postmodern condition. The postmodern condition is the cultural logic of late capitalism. The place we're in within capital, the culture that is produced by capital, is postmodern. This is postmodernist. We're in postmodernity. And so the challenge is when you start talking about postmodernism or postmodernity or the postmodern condition as something that people can fight against, you can't, because it's here. The thing that it is here. There is no fighting against it. Just as it'd be like saying to someone, hey, we want to fight capitalism by starting a co-op. That's great. You think you're fighting capitalism. Capital is able to make do with that. And if it's not able to make do with that, it'll find a way to change how it works. It'll find a way to add those things in. There are co-ops or socialist countries throughout Europe that are absolutely capitalist. Communist China is absolutely capitalist. There's no way to fight capitalism. Capitalism is the thing. It is everywhere. And postmodernity is the way that capital builds culture. It is the culture produced by capital that we are within and we are produced by. The challenge becomes that you have two ways to deal with this. One is to, in my opinion, and I would say Jameson's opinion, he's pretty explicit on this actually, to fight postmodernity, to fight capitalism, just means that you are wholly taken by it. You're just wholly taken by it, and you're fighting the system inside of the system without knowing you're in the system, which means ultimately your activities are mostly neuter. They're negativized. They're part of the system. The quote, I have a couple quotes from him that I've pulled up, and it's like, we must now affirm it is precisely this whole extraordinary, demoralizing, and depressing original new global space, which is the moment of truth of postmodernity. That's it. Every cultural space, everything, art galleries, universities, shopping malls, grocery stores, fucking fruit stands on the side of the road, farms, meetings of socialist groups. It doesn't fucking matter. All of it operates according to market logic. Everything does. And market logic, at the base of it, forms very particular cultural realities. And the way that this sort of functions at this point is that everything's built out of those. If you're not aware of this thing you're in, you will not be able to work to change it. You cannot step outside of capitalism. You cannot step outside of postmodernity and critique it from outside, but you can be aware of it. And by being aware of it, that thing, how it functions, what it does, you can actually start building tools within the system that allow you to modify, to change things, to mess with the system in really unique ways. He gives a lot of really fantastic examples. Ones I really like, Philip K. Dick, he uses as an example of someone who kind of through literature and art starts painting and problematizing the sort of issues with capital in ways that sort of paint the edges of the system. I would say a lot of sci-fi writers do this. This is one of the things sci-fi is very, very good at. But what they're doing by painting those edges, they're giving us ways to sort of right ourselves to inside of the massive dark forest that is reality, where we can't find an edge and we can't place ourselves on a map, to build a map, to put something that is us as a relation to things. And that cognitive mapping thing that he talks about, that gives us room to build new ways to cognize our position, to map ourselves inside of the world. This is the tools we need to begin with. And that is its own kind of whole discussion. I would love to fucking go into. I feel like I should. But at the same time, it's like the challenge becomes if you tell people and you talk about it in a way that says, hey, we're able to fix this. You'll feel better. Just do these things. It follows the logic of cultural reality and logic of capitalism rather than working within it or being aware of it. Nietzsche following Kant, I think, and this is one of those things, I really like the book, the idea of pure critique. Goes into this a bit via Kant through Deleuze, but Nietzsche does this too, where there is Klossowski's reading of The Eternal Return, and I think Nietzsche's writing of it puts him in a specific place. The Eternal Return is not something we are doomed to do. It's the reality of the situation. If you found out you were going to do this thing forever, what would you do? That's because that's what happens. But it's not that we have our internal lives and then the world is circular and we're going to come back and do all this again. But instead that the sort of reality of that return is that if we're aware that we will come back to this moment, that awareness adds a something, adds a tick to it, adds an edge that shifts how that return happens. And if we're aware of that, it does it again. If we're aware of that, it does it again. If we're aware of that, it does it again. And even if we are trapped in this eternal recurrence of the same, being aware of that and how it functions makes it change ever so slightly. It makes it shift how it works. Postmodernism for Jameson is born of this same mentality. When we experience postmodernism, if we are not aware of it, if we think we can fight against it or that we are not inside of it, that we, as we are talking about it, as I'm putting this out, if the words I'm using, I am not aware, are part of the cultural logic of late capital, then I'm simply serving the master. There is no fighting the master. There is simply serving the master. So the question is, do you serve him by saying we can fight it and then being all proud that you're outside of it because you're a happy lefty? Or do you talk about how we can develop new tools, new concepts, and new ways for us to right ourselves inside of this world? Do we redefine the cultural logic of things, the class structure, the terminology around class that exists for these things in order to be able to place ourselves in the world and in this marketplace? That thing is the emancipatory potential that Jameson's going for. Anything short of that is just in the logic of late capital and doing a disservice to Jameson. And it's kind of a huge problem because if we are to be able to move forward, and this is Jameson's entire point through everything he writes, the reality is we must, as everything, and he comes to this, by the way, through some guys you may have heard of, Deleuze and Guattari. He very much comes to this through that. And it's the way that the world is deterritorialized and the reterritorialization of capital and how it functions is that it gives us a lack of ability to orient ourselves. Shakespeare, exactly. So Shakespeare brings up, one of the examples he uses is the Westin Bonaventure Hotel in LA. If you haven't been to it, one, it looks really cool from the outside. It is. It's just off downtown. It's a very iconic building, very iconic. But inside, all the rooms and everything it's a big circle building. It's a couple circle buildings, but like all of it is inside of a big fucking circle. And you can't really orient yourself on any floor ever. Normal hotels, you go in, let's big block hotels like in New York, say. You go in and there's like, there's like on the right, you check in, on the left, maybe check out and baggage. And then maybe there's a bar for the side. You have your elevators in the middle, you go up, and then the building is square. You walk out of the elevator and you could take a right, but you can orient yourself based on all of this stuff. You can find your way through a building and know where you are. We're in the back side of the building. For example, at the Westin Bonaventure Hotel in LA, because it's completely circular and the hallways are circular and the rooms are circular, you can very, very, very easily, and if you've ever been in it, you wouldn't know, but it's kind of, you just get lost. You can't write yourself to the rest of the world until you go into a room and open your window, and then you write yourself to the world. But as soon as you turn around, like what part of the building are you in? You can't orient yourself. So how do you, as someone who exists in there, ever write yourself? You can't. You can never do that alone. This is the reason that Jameson goes through his critique as he does. The whole point is that a single person cannot orient themselves. They cannot fix themselves. But if I send up a Marco and someone nearby sends up a Marco and then someone else sends up a Marco and someone else says Polo, and we know, oh, that's how you get out of the pool. that's the thing. This whole thing requires us all to redefine how we map. When we map ourselves as we do now, we map ourselves as white, American, middle class, lower middle class, poor, capitalist, anti-capitalist, leftist. None of this stuff is writing ourselves. There's no help in us mapping or me finding out where I am. It's all meaningless. It becomes another aesthetic sort of cloth for me to put over my head and look around at the world. That's not useful to anybody. And it doesn't help me get any better. But I do get to pretend, if I were to be in the Bonaventure and go, I'm on the north side of the whole thing. Yep. Nice north side. I'm good. I fixed it. I am oriented. Are Are you? Am I? How do I know? Well, I don't. But I just say it. And then I tell the guy next to me, you're a North Sider. Hey, how you doing, North Sider? I'm a North Sider? Oh shit, I'm a North Sider. Nice. How do you know? You don't. But this shit in capital works by the market logic, and you get to claim leftism, you get to claim you're fighting things, you get to do that. But at no point is there emancipatory potential at all in any of this. We need to work together. We need to work together. To do that, we need to redefine what class means, what territory means, how we orient ourselves to each other and to the outer limits of what capitalism has capable. That thing is how we fight and how we change the system. Because by doing so, we've reoriented ourselves in a way that capitalism can't individualize. It requires individualization. That's one of the things Jameson talks about. This is the nature of the market forces. So by reorienting things and shifting ourselves and cognitively remapping our reality, we're able to change how class consciousness functions at a basic level. And in doing so, we shift how postmodernism functions, because capitalism necessitates classes. But by changing what class means, we force the system to change. That's it. It forces the system to change. It has to work around that if we can cognitively map and define those things. That's the point. We have to reproduce the territory, make a new territory, and set the whole thing up. So the entire thing of like saying, we don't like postmodern culture, or we really love postmodern culture. It's like, you both love and hate it. Also, the hating is postmodern culture. It doesn't even matter. Like none of these things matter anymore. It's irrelevant. He even talks about how we move between political, economic, and social, like with ease, between social codes in those eras. Oh, he titled the segment "Haters Get Me." See, this is... Did he really? Oh no. That's not a great start. That's not a great start at all. That's not a really good start at all. I just turned it on. It doesn't matter if it's a joke. It doesn't matter if it's a joke. Like, that's what you're doing is you're setting up things. Like, this is the nature of semiotic structures inside of postmodernism, is that you place this. Now, he gets to determine, right? Because if I come on, it doesn't matter how I come on. He gets to determine by how he reacts and how he interacts and how his audience interacts, whether that was a joke or not. And he will be able to say it afterwards. He can retroactively change what that means afterwards. He said to come on at 2:00. He'll have me on right afterwards. He sent me the link. Really frustrating when that happens. That shit's very, very frustrating. But that's the beast. Like, I'm not I use the joke in the video, standing on the edge of the cliff. The Catcher in the Rye is the joke. Like, we're not one man standing against the world. I'm not here fighting postmodernism. What I'm doing is, I think, what Jameson's doing, which is begging people to take a moment and to understand that you have to do that sort of separation, that understanding of your own process of how your drives are formed and how these things come about. It's the Nietzschean move of the awareness of the eternal return, the awareness of being in postmodernism and being inside of a postmodern culture, which we are because we are within capitalism, the awareness of capitalism. Like, again, Marx. And this is one of the things, again, I critiqued pretty heavily because Marx did not like capitalism as a thing. Marx was very anti-capitalist, but Marx did not fight the idea, say the idea of like stopping capitalism, right? Like the entire thing that he's sort of pushing, and the entire thing that all these guys are continually pushing, is that here's how things are moving, here's how these machines work, use them. Here's how the parts of the machines work, can we use them differently? And this is Deleuze's entire project. Hey, by the way, under the cultural logic of late capitalism that we exist within, it's impossible for us to write ourselves, to claim ourselves, to have ties to the past, to be part of social codes, and to do things at that level. Is there a way for us then to understand that the way that the market functions, by doing all of these things, is there a way we can fuck with that stuff by doing pieces of it? That's the deal. And if we can't take those pieces, what is there? Like if we can't build those pieces, if all we can do is sort of reproach each other and critique and criticize, not even critique, and sort of mince words and just constantly be putting out product, that's fine. That's capitalism will continue. Capitalism will also continue if you do what Jameson says, but it'll change. That's it. What does late capitalism refer to specifically? So there's a nature of like a couple stages of it from sort of how Mandel talks about it. And Mandel was a Marxist who sort of pulled things. And basically it was late capitalism is not necessarily post-industrial, but is like this place where the entire economic system is industrialized fully for the first time. Ernest Mandel has an entire piece on it. It's really interesting. But that's the idea, is that we get to the point where everything is now part of capital. Early capitalism, like you still had social and cultural and other elements. There are other elements, right? So we've got, how to put it? Marx's time, you still kind of had social codes. You could say up until the 40s, men were men, women were women. We had the family. This is what you did. We had land we cared about, blah, blah, blah. Capitalism hadn't like infected everything yet. The industrial process and mechanization hadn't infected everything yet. Late capitalism is when it's done that. And I would ask what part of things, it's what part of things that exist are there that capitalism's not imbued within. And that's the 80s. That's the entire idea. So it's a frustrating thing to sort of not, I don't know. When you watch people go, this is correct, this is the correct, and it's like they end up with the thing that is on the person. And that's the problem. It's if you get to the point where it's like, you can fix things, here's how you fix yourself. Anyone who says that, here's how you can be okay, here's how you can solve this, here's what you can do, like personally, and it does involve only you, you're not doing the thing. You're not. Capitalism is happy to have you as an individual, especially broken apart into many aesthetic phases that you sort of put on in different ways. I need to join his thing now. One moment. We're going to take a break. I'll be right back, and we'll get this going. All right. Let's see, restream. Oh,
Surely be back
that's
soon.
not
I will
Michael.
answer. Uh,
It's okay. It's not Michael.
yes,
I know.
capitalism does indeed make AI worse. AI also makes capitalism worse. These are both true things. But the thing I will say, someone before asked,
That's
when was the last
it's.
time I
I'm
watched Lord
putting
of
it there
Law?
because that's.
I've been
I
there already,
don't
and we're
have.
going back. The story
I've
of
got to
the
move
wrestling show on
Michael in.
Saturday is that we have
Just give
to
me 2
free
seconds,
Twitter Bond,
everyone.
which has been taken over by an evil.
There we go. There's Michael. Lovely. Up, 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 up. Oop, 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 oop. Lovely. All right. Oh, that's for me. Is that for me? Thank you. All right. I think it's working. I think. There is. I have a. It's a. You're. I am trying to figure out how to do this goddamn thing. This goddamn thing. Sorry, so we're gonna do. Well, thanks. Give me 2 seconds. I'll get rid of that stuff so you don't have to deal with my goddamn super chat people annoying the shit out of you this whole time, because they will do that. Oh, no, then we'll do that. I'm ready to go. We're live and we're going on my side, and you now have audio. Hey, Michael, how are you doing?
Good. Well, Brooks, let's talk. So Brooks, we've never met before. I've watched your videos. Thank you for taking the time to chat.
I've watched you as well, both prior and during and after and all this.
The
weird few months you fucking have.
It's been a little bit of a thing. It's been a little bit of a thing. Wait, I want to hear more about your channel, because again, all I know is I've watched you. I've watched your channel. I think I said this to people earlier. The way I've thought of your channel when your videos pop up is like, wow, this is a person who gives like graduate seminar discussions on Deleuze and stuff like that.
You're very kind.
No,
you are.
Cool. I mean,
you're very kind.
Well,
I mean that because like
this earth, and it's a thing that you have chosen to do at that time, and I think there's a lot of content that's doing things much worse than that. So that's kind of how I've thought of what you do. But I would love to hear about.
Yeah, I mean, it came about in a weird way.
You exist, all that. If you don't mind giving me the backstory.
Yeah, I'll try to give the short version, and feel free to poke. I don't shut up, so feel free to interrupt. It's no problem.
Yeah,
it's the fun part. It's your show and your restream, so you totally get to mute me. So when quarantine hits, and this was a thing in the States I put it like this, and it's terrible. I had lost friends and people died, but when the quarantine actually happened and they like told everyone to stay inside, I was in LA, and it was kind of like summer vacation for adults. It sounds terrible to say that now, but like there was like 2 or 3 weeks where everyone's like, I don't guess we're not going to work. What are we doing? Yeah. And so I created a Discord to get people together. I was like, this is my chance, because I loved Deleuze, I love philosophy, but I never like had a chance, especially as an adult, to have people sit with me and explain stuff and talk through it and really tarry. And so we started reading Anti-Oedipus, and we did like 2-3 hour readings every day for the first week, which is too much, by the way. And then we ended up doing it and moving it to like twice a week. And then for the last 5.5 years, I've kept it going once every week. We just read another as far as we go. Right now we're in chapter 4, the 3rd time through, and we're doing like a paragraph or 2 every time. Like it takes a while to get through some of these. And it's been sort of grown since then. We have like QC now has like 12 different readings from we have a lot of Nietzsche right now.
Well, what made Deleuze? Well, I guess two questions I'm curious about. What is your like background? Like, have you always been a person into philosophy and theory? And then like what was it about Deleuze that made that the person that you really wanted to center the project around?
Yeah. So I've always been someone who enjoys that shit, I think would be the easy way to put it. I've been a philosophy enjoyer. Thanks to various things, I never got a chance to go the academic route. So mostly
you need it.
Well, I was part of I had a large scale traumatic experience. I was a student at Columbine, and
Oh my
lost a whole
God.
bunch of friends, and it kind of sent me into a weird spiral of life.
God, Brooks, I'm so sorry to hear that.
No, I'm kind of used to talking about it now, and
Yeah.
it's been like 25 years,
no idea.
and I don't think you did it. I don't think you caused it, so you're good.
That's-
But
that's
I
the
appreciate
one
the
thing I'm
thoughts.
sure of. That's the only thing I know for sure.
Yes.
I didn't do that. Everything else is on the table.
No, I appreciate it, but it's so that kind of I ended up going to college for 2 weeks, and then one day I couldn't find parking and never went again. That's kind of
I think that's relatable for many of us.
it is.
You
It
don't find
is.
parking for a thing, you never do the thing again.
But my life sort of put me in a really weird place where, because of that, I have to mention the trauma.
Yeah.
Because of that, I ended up actually doing a lot of activist work. I ended up working on a documentary with Michael Moore called Bowling for Columbine.
Oh, yeah.
I ended up writing a book and doing like a whole bunch of stuff politically. It became a whole thing for a lot of my life, and with that comes, for me at least, a sort of natural desire to understand sort of how people become what they are, how we get there. And Deleuze was not my early one. My very early stuff, primarily actually my 20s, was Zizek. And sort of surrounding and Lacan and Zupanzik and sort of that style of thing where it was like very Zizek. I'm just going to say it's Zizek. I have every one of his books, but he got me into Jameson, who then got me into, in turn, Deleuze, because a lot of that stuff sort of comes on from a lot of their stuff. And I did not understand it. I thought it was a silly, stupid book, Anti-Oedipus, the first time around. That was a silly, stupid book.
Well, and I'll just say for folks, I think that and I don't, guys, for my audience, I don't mean this in a disrespectful way, but I get the sense that the Brooks's crew, they're deeper in it. They're watching 5-hour videos on Deleuze. So in case some of you guys know this, Gilles Deleuze, gnarly philosopher, like someone people who are very smart and have read all of the figures that Deleuze and Guattari talk about, will still sometimes be like, this is impenetrable, which is kind of the reason for my question of like,
well, no, and you'll see me. I'm 5 years into what is, in that 5 years, my personal 6th reading, but my 3rd like close reading with people. And we've had like Deleuze scholars join live. It's been incredible. Like tell me where I'm fucking up and how I'm wrong, which is the best thing ever. I joke that like I get to abuse people by being stupid, so they have to teach me. And that's kind of the setup we're in. And all of that puts you in a place where, I still, every time I read Anti-Oedipus, I come through paragraphs and I go, wait, what? And like, I ended up starting to learn to read French just so I could go to the original text, because when it becomes your thing, it's your thing. Well, how I got there is that with Zizek, he's a great deal of art theory. It's a huge amount of art theory and visual and video games and movies. And I'm a video game guy. I love video games. I ended up getting work in video games. It's my primary career has actually been video games for about 20 years.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, I've had a weird fucking life. Like
as this is, I've been becoming a parent very quickly.
I've had a very, very, it's been weird. And I've embraced it, but it's also, again, as I'm sitting here and I'm like, I have a jealousy of people who've done the academic thing, because now I realize it's my great regret in life is not being, I can't become a professor without going to 4-year school. And I think I don't know how I'd handle that personally, doing 4 years of stuff. So like, I'm jealous of you people who've done the academic. This is so cool. But
then the people who did it, no one can be a professor anyway. So
no, that's also true. Also,
three jobs left.
Well, no, and every academic person, I'm like, you're stupid, Brooks. You're really, do you want I don't get paid well, Brooks. Fuck off. Like, it's like, this job sucks. You don't want this. But it's, I ended up getting into video games, and the art theory Zizek put forward, I got really into, but I started running into issues. I started working in particularly more immersive stuff. Virtual reality became a passion. I ended up working, I've worked for some amazing people. And as I've done that, I needed to understand how to make more interesting things. That's like I've always demanded. And Deleuze gave me tools through his cinema series and his book on Francis Bacon that I was able to start using in VR and like playing with.
Okay, I was about to ask that. So for you, there's like a direct overlap between the stuff you were into theory-wise.
And it was like, oh, this clicks. And then it sort of retroactively, I started rereading other Deleuze and going, well, this is, again, still, Anti-Oedipus felt silly to me. 1,000 Plateaus, I started to get like what I thought I started to understand it. I did not. I will just be clear. I did not understand it. I thought I did. And the QC was kind of this first chance for me to really dive in. It was, you know, in this time where people could do it, and it's grown into something I'm fortunate is like ongoing. We have a lot of readings. We have a lot of people who've joined. As I've said, we have postdoc, we have professors, we have authors. We're getting early copies of new Deleuze translations and Serres translations. It's crazy. And I'm like, I hate to use the word blessed, but genuinely, I just feel constantly like blessed that this became a thing. And so a lot of my content in the last year and a half, 2 years has been more responding and critiquing. And so, because there's a lot of really bad philosophy on YouTube, and you know this. And
well, yeah, like me.
no, well, there's a reason I did your video differently, and I want to be specific because
No, I hope you know I'm saying that in a spirit of
oh, I know, I'm sure.
Kindness. I'm not at all trying to be a dick, but yeah, I want to talk about this.
Well,
but
so there's when I say bad, there's horrifying. Like I'm not like Jordan Peterson level, like nonsense, stupid garbage that just isn't even connecting with the work.
Yeah.
All the way through to what is ostensibly decent, but philosophy tube, terrible philosophy. Almost everything everything she's done, there are good videos she's done. I actually like a couple of her videos, but they're not the philosophy ones. The one on the healthcare system in the UK, I found very good. It was really, it's like, do that. Clearly your passion is in this and it's different. But then this Nietzsche video, and that's, again, we kind of crossed over.
I gotta
a
say
little
this,
bit
Brooks. This is a funny thing for your video. This is a funny thing to me, at least, is because I made a comment on a stream about someone making videos responding to that, but it was someone else I was thinking of whose channel name I forget now, but it was really mean. So I feel like I watched some of yours, and I would say, like, I think you were probably a little more intense than I am with this stuff. And
I get really intense. Don't get me wrong. I'm aware of where I am. I don't think I was ever mean. Again, Abigail, I got tired at some point when we got to like the MAGA and Nietzsche thing. I was fucking. I mean, and I didn't like those videos a lot. I kind of talked about it in like my own sort of way, but no, there's another channel, and I'm forgetting the name, and I kind of don't care to remember it anyways. But where I watched a bit of it, and because I think there was Abigail put the Nietzsche videos out. I did see a bit of yours. Then the algorithm showed me this other one where the person was like kind of outright mean in a way that to me bordered on cruel, and that kind of bothered me. I didn't watch. You made a lot of videos about Nietzsche responding to Abigail. Well,
I did not.
I actually reacted to her live. Like someone sent me the video, and I'm like, all right, I'll start watching. It's fun to. I've done a couple Abigail videos in the past, and I was like, sure. And I just I have a problem where I can keep going. I just don't lose energy, and by the end of it, like I ended up it was like I went straight through all of it. It was a 7-hour stream, and that I chopped into bits. With your video,
people are like this though. People I know that like Deleuze. I'll say this and we talk about video, but I went to grad school around a bunch of Deleuzians, but I was like the outcast because I wasn't in kind of the era that I was deepest in philosophy. It's when it felt like the two most popular, old French guys, or one dead, one alive, were Deleuze and Alain Badiou. And there was and this is like very, very reductive. But there was this sort of split in a lot of my colleagues where you had the Deleuzians, who were probably also really into like Spinoza and things connected to that tradition. And then you had the like Badiouians. Oh no, because I reversed you on my end, so the things would be there. Hold on.
Someone's yelling at me that everything's backwards.
So now it's gonna line. But then there was sort of the people on the other hand who were, I think the camp I fell in, which were the Badiouians that kind of followed a line that was a bit more back to like German idealism. And
Badiou, we can be very clear about where Badiou lands on Deleuze. Like I don't think a lot of people are going to debate that one.
So that's why I was a little late coming around. But one of have you ever read the work of James Williams on Deleuze?
I probably have. It probably has been a while.
I'm sure, but he was one of my grad school professors, and he was really not mean to me, but he was hard on me because like it took me a while to get into Deleuze. But all that I have.
I have. I was just looked. Yes, I have.
Yeah, one of those figures in my life was really mean to me once in a way that was really productive. But yeah, all I'd say is that's kind of my relationship to Deleuze was always a thing where I was like a late in life sort of. It was almost like once I was out of academia, I spent a little more time with the Luz, but when I was
You're not alone in that.
Yeah.
Like this is a thing. I've a lot of people who've made their way to being a PhD philosophy guy who've gone out, one way or another, but definitely not Deleuze way, because that's not a common thing. I would just say like that's not a common thing these days. They find afterwards they sort of come to it, and it's. I don't want to like date myself or you because we're both very young, strapping lads. But it's
I've outed myself as like the oldest millennial, so you should protect yourself.
I was born in '80, so I think we probably are about the same age then.
Yeah.
The late 30s is about when people see it. Like mid to late 30s seems to be like when people start making a turn towards Deleuze, which is kind of weird. A lot of Deleuze's work requires outside of philosophy. It's one of the things that I think makes a lot of his stuff impenetrable to people who go only the philosophy route, because he is playing with a huge amount of social anthropology. Is core to everything in Anti-Oedipus. I would say the same of mathematics and calculus. His work with Leibniz is not just purely a philosophical engagement. He's engaging with a lot of Leibniz's sort of mathematical work. And so if you don't have like a breadth of stuff, which younger people, you don't, it's fine. You're young, it's life. But as you sort of get out into the rest of the world and you start doing more things, other parts start clicking. For me, and a few people I've talked to, that it's like, I get what, it's like that kind of feeling a little bit. And that's kind of where we've been in the QC, has been trying to find a place, speaking of academia, that is that middle ground. Because the outside of academia is a death field of shit. I don't know how else to put it. There's just no way to learn properly, and there's no way to have real philosophical discussions in a way that is engaging it.
Just because people are asking, guys, there's a link to Brooks's channel in the chat right now, and in case you're just tuning in, this is Brooks from Quarantine Collective. We're talking about that project, Brooks's work, so I'm just making sure that all of you have that link in the chat. Sorry to interrupt you. I know you like
no, you're good.
You're going for it, but yeah. So in case, and guys, the reason Brooks is here, because Brooks, we can talk about this a bit, made a video about my last video.
And I didn't react to it because here's the thing that made your video interesting in this, and I want to be very specific because it's important. Yeah. It isn't like a philosophy tube or one of these other people I'm not going to mention who just clearly have no idea what they're talking about. I've watched your stuff. You're not bad at this in any way. I don't want that to be thought of at all. In prep for this, I actually went back and I went and found it, and I'm not doxing. I won't say I went and found maybe a PhD thesis on if that's you, Kierkegaard.
Yeah, that's probably me.
I'm assuming because the name in college kind of clicked, and
yeah.
There's probably not.
It's publicly available. That's fine.
Some people are sensitive to the things. Yeah. But it's very good.
Appreciate it.
Like I don't engage well enough with Kierkegaard, and it made me feel embarrassed. So it's very good. And so I know you do that. You're at that point. And so I didn't want to just go, God damn, this fucking, I wanted to go, okay, how do I tarry with the points he's making and try to structure something that is more dealing with the criticality, the critique, rather than just pure criticism or argumentation. And the hope was, and maybe I didn't do it well enough, but the hope was that I would build something that would put us in a position to be able to go, here is actually materially where I think we disagree. And
well, I would be curious to see if there's any significant area where we disagree in terms of, for example, our general reading of like Jameson, right? Because I would think, to me, where I see a disagreement or a disalignment and is like a genre thing. And because I think that there is, and this is something
we definitely have a disagreement, but
yeah. But
sure.
I wanted to say this first, because I do think some of the stuff, some of the critiques you had in my video, some of them I was just like, yeah, it seems like you're just mad that it's a YouTube video, because I do think that there is, because we do different things, right? Like you are facilitating in-depth discussions of text that are quite long, and when you are reacting to stuff, you're going pretty carefully and point by point. I think for me, the goal, and I'm still figuring out, to be honest, what the goal of what I'm doing now is, being a free agent or whatever, is making stuff that can get folks a foot in the door who have never heard of the figures being discussed before.
Right.
And this is something for me that comes like out of, and this is the thing when I was like still teaching, a struggle I had, and something that was really hard for me for a while is like and I won't say this universally, I believe that there are cases and there are figures in which if you say too much, it precludes maybe like a casual interested person from getting into it. And there's something to me that at least is like slightly dialectical about this, about giving like a piece of the thing to give one bearings in the thing to go from there. And, for example, with like the Jameson video, it was very important to me that I made sure there was like further readings in the description of that one so that no one was just like, oh, that was the thing. That's
right.
all the thing. Because he's such an incredibly, I think at least, complex and important thinker. And I think, because to me, and I'm going to go back in what we were talking about before, like the way I came to reading Jameson in the first place was in his books on Hegel. And in particular, the way in which...
fucking reads. Those are fucking reads.
Yeah. Well, so friends in the chat, like this is, again, to be reductive in a way that Brooks might not like. We've talked about dialectics before and the general principle of like the dialectic we see in Hegel or Marx or whatever. A thing that Jameson does that's very cool is he pushes one to think about how the dialectic itself is dialectical. And there's a dialectic.
You're talking about valences.
Yes. Talking about valence of the dialectic. There's some really great chapters in that book.
God damn, what a good book.
Yeah. And the way it's been picked up is really good. So, that is for me, one of the sides of Jameson that I kind of had. That was like my way to get in the door. And that's why recently the thing that stood out to me in terms of like why Jameson is an interesting counter to some of the online philosophy stuff is when we think about people like a Jordan Peterson or a James Lindsay, who in that video I just showed and didn't name because I'm so sick of talking about them, but they're who I was thinking about there. The reason I think about those guys when I think about Jameson is that Jameson's like an interesting thinker about conspiracy theories in that he's sort of just like, we could say that there's like a sympathy for the conspiratorial and that he's like, okay, people are trying to make systemic sense of a world that doesn't make sense. And they're driven to a sense of conspiracy. There's a really good article on this. I can find it and pull it up by Frank Ruda. And I think that's where like Jameson is such an important, not even counter, but like understanding the way he thinks about that stuff, which is why I was like super reductive in the way I talk about, history and his specific conception of historization, because if we're going to like really get into it, we can get into this. But for me, I was sort of like, what is the kernel of the idea that helps us understand why someone like Jameson is useful in countering some of what I would call the more like conspiratorial philosophy that sadly for us is very popular in digital spaces.
So I probably would have a slightly different take on the conspiratorial than how you're talking about. Maybe, I don't know. This will be interesting. For me, the way Jameson, I think, sees that and how he talks about it is that they are attempting a version of cognitive mapping. Terrible version, but they're trying to write themselves in the dark forest of life that we can't write ourselves 100%. Ever in. We have no idea where we're at, and they're grasping at the walls. His critique of them is that they always do it from two particular places. One is that there is a known history that we can know in a direct causative line that's very anti-Nietzsche, for sure anti-Jameson, but that there's a direct line of causality that we can always point to and that we're able to form. We do that because of necessity would be his critique. And then the other side would be that claiming that if a person knows this thing, then they can understand the world, and that by understanding the world, they can then fight the power. That also would be the other half of the critique, I think Jameson would levy, that there is no greater thing or stuff to fight, but instead by the nature of understanding our cognitive mapping, not as an individual, but as a class, and being able to redefine what that means, redefine what territory is, throw out all the old terms, instead of reading things through an archaism of older terms that exist. That gives us a new system that by doing so, forces capitalism to change effectively.
Yeah, and let me just throw this in there. Just I did a quick search on like a doc I have with some Jameson notes, and sadly I don't have the direct reference here. I can you can Google this if you want to find it. It's probably from Valence's The Dialectic. But Jameson said the conspiracy theory as seen as a degraded attempt to think the impossible totality of the contemporary world system. And yeah, I think that kind of maps on with what you were just saying there. That like when we think about cognitive mapping and trying to make sense of the system, you know, the Jameson move against, which is just a Hegelian Marxist move against, and we can talk about if we think this word means different stuff, a sort of postmodern move is to say that we have to try to think the system as a totality. We need that sort of totalizing structure, even if that totalizing structure itself is dialectical, yada, yada. But I think
we need to assume it's all encompassing. Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
We have, and this is, again, to jump back to like German idealism stuff, this is the thing we get in Hegel, where Hegel's basically like, even if we can't actually think the totality, we have to presuppose that we can so we can start thinking. Because we're never going to start thinking if we're not willing to conceive of a totalizing system. And again, that's why, to get back to the conspiracy theory thing a little bit, is I think that's interesting that Jameson calls it a degraded attempt to think that totality, because it feels so impossible to think the totality. It feels impossible to like create a coherent cognitive map. And I think it's an interesting jumping off point. And again, why I think he's an interesting counter to some of those folks, and why, and again, this is like my particular interest in, and this is unfortunately what the concept of postmodernism has come to mean, at least in a lot of YouTube spaces, is like Jordan Peterson bullshit. And if you look at like the most popular videos that use that term on YouTube, it's like Petersonian bullshit. And I do think a lot of what you get in the work of, and it just sucks to say the work of someone like Peterson because he's such a hack, but I think it is like a degraded attempt.
But
totality of the system.
But this is I think my point in the video is if I asked you, do you believe in globe Earth? Are you going to go, of course, globe, like accepting the categorization from people who have no interest in the actual work is itself damaging. Because when we talk, if I were to say to you, and it's a private conversation away from the Petersonians and all the right wingers, if I were to say, hey, there's a lot of really good neo-Marxist, like postmodern thinkers that are pretty wonderful, you would go probably, oh, is there a new one? Because we kind of know what we mean when we say it, because Jameson is a neo-Marxist thinker about postmodernism. We like these concepts have specific terms, and in good faith, they have meaning that do mean things. And by saying that there is no connection or way that postmodernism or neo-Marxism come together is like accepting the categorization of the stupidest assholes who are bad faith that exist. And it's, that thing feels difficult to me to do.
I don't think I totally agree in as much as like, I think to make the specific claim that like that like Jameson isn't a postmodern neo-Marxist, to make that claim, I'm still comfortable with, because it's sort of using language, and you're right, that's developed by assholes, doesn't really mean anything, but it doesn't change the fact, for me at least, that the assholes have used that language that, for example, and this is something that goes back like years, I never say the name now, but at my old employer, you know, the way in which angry kind of right-leaning people call things postmodern neo-Marxist, or say you're doing neo-Marxism, or you're doing postmodern Marxism. So it's like, regardless of whether we know that those words either don't mean anything or mean something different, I think there is a value in pointing out to people that have participated in that discourse and been overwhelmed by it, that those words mean something different, or that there is a counter narrative there.
I agree with that for certain. I agree that it's worth absolutely doing the thing, but it's, and again, it's why that specific point probably is one we could probably move on from, because I think we do generally agree on this. The conversations ultimately at that point about, hey, it's worth fighting against. I don't like when people say there's no such thing as postmodern neo-Marxism. These things aren't related, blah, blah, blah. And I've heard that before, and it is how you worded it. And so I think I just jumped straight at that.
Well, yeah. But I don't, so in your mind then, who would be like the postmodern neo-Marxist that
Jameson.
You think of? Yeah, I don't.
He's not using traditional Marxism. His Marxism comes through Deleuze. Now, whether or not that is neo-Marxism, whether or not
this is where I differ from you, though. I think his Marxism is, I see it more as transmitted via like late Sartre.
I mean, Sartre didn't play with libidinal economy. Lyotard directly played from that when creating the term postmodernism, and that comes from Deleuze and Guattari's work in Anti-Oedipus.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that point, but I do think there's something. And again, this is probably.
This is why, but this is what makes this. This is why I love philosophy. Jameson, for me, is an evolution of thinking from Deleuze and Guattari. I didn't consider, I'm now in my head, it's running for a moment, the idea that he's coming off of Sartre, which makes sense. I don't know if I don't disagree, but I don't agree.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah. So I don't think
I like that. I like that idea. It makes it makes a lot more make sense suddenly. Yeah.
Well, when I say he's coming out of Sartre, I'm not saying that precludes
of course,
serious engagement with Deleuze, right? Because we know he's seriously engaged with Deleuze. And I think, hold on, I want to be weird. I think I can look through in a second. I have some Jameson behind me, and there's one book where he that has some essays on Deleuze that I was just thinking about, but I'm not going to be annoying and just read a book on stream. But I think
that's my job.
I think that's what you do. But it's in the Ideologies of Theory, I think, where he has essays on both of them. But so and one of the ways that Jameson comes into, and this is in his earlier shit, comes into Marxism is that engagement with Weird Sartre, and Weird Sartre is Critique of Dialectical Reason Sartre. And this is me almost being a sort of reactionary in grad school. When the cool kids were reading Deleuze, I got really into reading Amphetamine Sartre. And for those who don't know this, so some of you probably know Jean-Paul Sartre. You think of it existentialist guy, being in nothingness, nausea, Simone de Beauvoir's partner. There's cool pictures of him with Che Guevara. And in Sartre's early stuff, of course, he's very wedded to existentialism in a way that feels very non-Marxist, non-materialist. He then has a kind of pivot, writes this 2-part book called The Critique of Dialectical Reason while he is fucking mainlining amphetamines. And then the book comes out without being edited. And a lot of people don't read it because, rightly so, they're like, this is insane. And there's 300 pages about aliens in there. But Sartre does this thing.
I love Sartre, by the way. I do love Sartre, but I 100% know what you mean. It's and
Sartre was always interesting for me because there's a collection that's called something like Existentialism and Marxism, where Sartre talks about how, and he said this one time in one interview, that the goal of his project was the unifying of Marx and Kierkegaard, which is very much something from being a very young man I was interested in. So that's why I kind of got into him. But all that to say is
it's clicking for me very fast. And again, it's the reason philosophy is fascinating is generally when we engage these thinkers. I'm not saying, I can't say Jameson is not that. I would never do such a thing. But my engagement with Jameson is hardline on the Deleuze side in a very different way. And so as such, we would definitely come out of it with different versions of it. It's fascinating that way.
Yeah. And mine is not it at all. My engagement with Jameson is very much in the sort of the glasses I have on when I've read Jameson are Hegel, Marx, Sartre type glasses, maybe a little bit of some of the French rationalist.
My first time around it was Lacan, Zizek.
Yeah.
Again, he introduced me, and then through him and his essays on Deleuze, I ended up leaning hard into Lyotard, the libidinal economy, because Lacan was more my side of the Hegel, Zizek side of things, which is, again, libidinal desire and all of that shit.
Well, and that seems to be genealogically, that seems to be where our paths overlap the most, maybe in the sort of Zizekian wheelhouse, because, for me, it was reading, God, I think it's in The Parallax View.
Oh, God, what a good book.
Where he has a chunk.
God, he used to be so good, dude.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, this is the thing. He still says good stuff now. He just writes too much stuff. But
his graduate students write too much stuff. You mean?
Yeah. Parallax View, brilliant book, and he has a huge chunk on Kierkegaard there, which for me at a time where I was reading Kierkegaard kind of independently of the world of dialectics and materialism, seeing how he took that seriously was a light bulb moment. And my second light bulb moment was reading Adrian Johnston's Zizek's Ontology, and then seeing how that connected to materialism, and then I was very lucky. Adrian sort of casually did some mentoring for some years when I was still in the game and helped me kind of draw some lines of all this stuff. Truly one of the nicest, most generous guys.
That's
if you ever have folks on, someone you should reach out to because he's always down to chat. Or at least I haven't talked to him in a few years. Maybe
I'm always surprised people who it's one of the things I think I've had a weird life, but one of the things I've learned in specifically these academic learning circles, all the people who I would assume are more like the Hollywood stars, standoffish, you don't write them, their agents will talk to you. Like I wrote Eugene Holland, who's become one of my favorite sort of secondary writers on. Genuinely wonderful, like kind of quiet, like really just amazing. And most of these guys kind of are. It's kind of amazing. I think it's because there's not a lot of people writing them, honestly, these days. So I think they just like getting good notes from people that aren't sort of shitty. That's funny.
No, for sure. There's like a lot of review, and I like someone I love talking to is like Todd McGowan, someone who
Todd's great.
Love his work a lot. Yeah, and he's someone who he came on my stream like a couple months ago, but always been so generous. I find that the people that are doing really good work are nice, and people that are more like academic strivers can be dicks.
Yeah, people who are into the aesthetic of the thing. And again, this is why I wanted to make a proper response video, and I spent time not just doing a react, because I do think you're not that. I put you in a very particular category, and we do have differences, but it's one of the things.
But I guess I would just say then that's why like some of what we're talking about, because in a weird way, there's stuff in your video where I'm like, oh no, but like I know that, and like some of what you're saying is in the background for me, and for me, it's like always a choice. And this is sort of like when I first started, before I ever hosted, like I wrote videos for Wisecrack, and I started doing that. Oh shit, I said the W word. I'm committed to not saying it. But I was still in academia when I started writing stuff there. And my thing early on was I would inadvertently turn a script for a video that was meant to be like a YouTube video into an academic paper. And over the years, I've had to learn more and more like what is, and then almost thinking too, like, what is the purpose of this? And you talk about bad philosophy stuff on YouTube. And this is actually something I'm trying to like make a video on. So it's interesting to be called the bad philosophy stuff, because I'm like, okay,
that's not what I did. Just to be fair, it's not what I did, because bad philosophy to me is people who don't engage the text at all. To me, there are mistakes in your interpretation that are very particular, and that the one mistake, if there is one, I would say it's the focus on the idea that the individual can fight back, or that it is a fighting back or a curative thing against postmodernism. Yes. That thread is throughout the whole video, and it's the engagement on the rest of it is right if you flip that to the other side, where it's not the individual, but instead the collective, and understanding that. And that people need to be aware of it, but that you're not ever fixing capitalism, that you're not fixing postmodernism. Of course.
And this is why, and again, if there's a part of that video, like, I mean, any video I've ever made, I could look at and be like, I want to fix this, and that, redo that.
Oh, it's awful to rewatch your own shit, isn't it? It's the worst thing.
But I do think the area, because, even in some of like the good faith comments I've gotten and stuff like that, the thing that I would have liked to try to find a way to explain a little more clearly and a little bit differently, and I think these overlap, for me at least, are the Marxist dialectics and the way in which that gets us to a place where we're thinking structurally, not individually. The issue for me sometimes is if I'm trying to keep something at 15 to 20 minutes max, where does like the side path open up too much, and where are there things that I can get back
I
to
empathize
in the future? So
it's a baseline thing, because you're aware people are coming to this and you don't know who they are. If it was people like me or you can start in a different place. It's easy. There's some presumptions you can make, but I would say
a difference too, though, is like to talk about the bad YouTube philosophy. The thing that I think I don't like about some YouTube stuff, some YouTube philosophy stuff, is the attempt of some videos and some creators to basically be like, this is what this person thinks, and here's all you need to know.
Yep.
Now, I tongue in cheek in that video, of course, say I'm going to be 100% right, which is just a way to try to troll a little bit.
I didn't comment on that. I'm aware of performativity is a thing. Showmanship is a thing.
But so I try to, and this comes from, just to keep connecting dots, Kierkegaard, very pedagogical writer, very into Socrates, and his whole thing was like like what it means to teach, or what it means to do philosophy, is to be the occasion for the thought of another.
Yes.
And I think there's some Deleuzean stuff there too. I think
your job is to give lines of flight. Your job is to create lines of flight, something like that.
So, my goal is always that there's, if nothing else, there's like something that someone could hold on to that allows them to think about things a little bit differently, or like a lens to bring to things. My secondary goal is that there's more questions left open than answered, so that someone can dig into other stuff if they want to. So I don't know. And this is where, again, where I think maybe there's just some like structural differences, like because some of the
No,
stuff
I appreciate the
read in your
difficulty.
video-
I have
Yeah.
I have a series of videos where I try to explain concepts, and I've gone through this, and it's one of the challenges I have, in very much the same way I've had to tarry with. I think so. Again, I appreciate it very much. There's a couple things I think that are worth sort of mentioning, though.
Do it.
The focus on the individual is a thing that I think a lot of people do with the Lose videos too. Like in general, people are like, "Here's how it impacts
Wait,
you."
and I just want to be specific so I get what you're responding to here. So the individual thing, you're basically saying,
Here's what
and-
you can do to fix this. Here's how you can fight back. Here is what you can do as an individual.
see, but I don't want to go rewatch my own video. I don't feel like I was that like individualistic. And I think part of it, when I say like you, part of what I'm meaning there is like,
All of
here's
you.
how you can think about stuff. So I think when we think about like cognitive mapping, I know that the goal is, it's not like Jameson is like, everyone make your own special cognitive map that's just yours, that's going to get you to the magic treasure. But I think, well, go ahead. But that's because I don't think I was doing the thing that you're saying I'm doing, but I want to hear you out.
Well, so it almost doesn't. I don't want to say it doesn't matter what you think you were
Yeah.
doing. I took it this way.
Yeah.
So certainly at least one other person took it this way. I'm not that interesting as a human. And I think a good number of people, if you go through the comments and if you see stuff, there's a lot of that sort of response of like,
I read comments obsessively. So definitely.
it's one of those things that the cultural logic of late capitalism, according to Jameson, starts with the individual. So if in this space we are not immediately tarrying with the idea of eliminating that, going with the idea of, well, there is no such, let me head a little your side of the fence. There is no such thing as the self. The self is really a reference to the self, but not even that. It's actually the self referencing itself. And there's kind of this meta interaction that makes you as a thing. You don't really exist as an individual that's, wholly identifiable. If you don't tarry with that immediately, that is the presumed foundation and the base on which all capital and postmodernist thought is. And everyone in your audience is put in the postmodern space. So if you don't immediately tarry with that, the presumption is that you are taking it from that position as the individual outwards. And so it's important to always do that. It's very difficult not to. There are times where you can. Like I have a video on resentment, for example, where I kind of explain that. Resentment is an individualized thing. It has to do with your internal will and sort of personal experience. So it's resentment there that builds into something larger. So you can do it in a Nietzschean sense. You don't have to tarry with it. But I have another one on I call it, my joke about Trump is that he's the cuckold capitalist. But to get to that point, it's like it's a 60-minute fucking video. It's huge. But to get there, people have to understand that they don't exist. It had to be part of the video necessarily. So there's a lot of different ways to go about it. But that baseline that is absolutely, and I would be loath to find a philosopher or thinker in all of this who doesn't presume that everyone who's coming to them is starting with the idea that they are a unique snowflake individual who is a subject who has a soul and a true identity, that I truly am. And I'm just trying to find out who I really am inside of this. And that's the first thing to deal with.
Yeah. Also, this is a question for the chat. Is someone watching us and reacting to us while we talk right now? Someone's talking about, so that would be so weird to me.
Hi, Sunday. I have a feeling it's going to be Sunday's watching us right now. Hi, Sunday. Say, he might, don't say hi. He might be one of the angry guys in the basement too.
Oh, no. Okay. Sunday. Oh, hello, Sunday. Listen, we're all angry.
I'm sure he's watching. Okay. He went live like an hour ago. And
is it a Twitch thing?
YouTube.
Or a YouTube thing?
No, cool. I don't think we're being I don't see a lot of philosophy on Twitch.
I want to know if I'm being watched. So this is just one where so I think a thing, and this is part of it too. And there's not a clean balance here, but I always presume, and people in the chat, you could, let me know what you think about this, but, I presume that like a certain chunk of my audience has hung around long enough where they like get what's going on in the background stuff, right? So for me, like talking about postmodernism, talking about capitalism is of course connected to the individualism of the market economy. So like I agree with what you are saying. I think where maybe I don't even want to say disagree, where maybe we don't see eye to eye there. I agree with what you're saying philosophically.
If you're lucky enough to have that audience, like, good for you.
Yeah.
I am still in the place where the people who come to me are random enough that I have to explain that no, Deleuze doesn't want all of us to become schizo. So I'm still in like a really rando position. And I tend to think that when we make stuff, especially again in the capitalist space, we can't be presuming who we're going out for an audience, especially in the algorithmic culture we have, that we have to presume that we're always opening up to new people. And so while we may have a boring beginning for the people who've been here a lot, and for you and I who don't believe in a subjectivity in the same way, and we just I want to skip that first few minutes, that's necessary almost every time. And I try to bring it up. I've failed to in times in live streams, but it's at the beginning. It's important because again, when you get to the point, and this is I do want to touch on because I saw someone was sending me your Blue Sky posts. I'm not upset about anything with Ground News as a sponsor. I don't give a shit. Just mentioning that my critique wasn't in sponsorship. My critique was that the way you led into it, particularly. Like if you had led into it like, and speaking of how fucked up postmodernity is, imagine a system where like that kind of thing, instead of here's how you fight postmodernism by using Ground News. And that rub, because that is again, teaching people and telling people and still part of it. And this is the same critique. It's again, that same, you can do what you can do, what you can do. And that's what we can do to fight postmodernism is first understand we have no self and that we have no orientation inside of the world. That base understanding gives us the understanding we need to rebuild what social mores are and how we socially connect at a fundamental level.
I'll get abstract and practical. Abstract wise, we might have different views on subjectivity. This is where I'm more of a Badiou guy than a Deleuze guy. And that I think there's an important role of subjectivity, but not subjectivity in sort of like the psychological self, but in the political subject, it's sort of structurally created, yada, yada. I think
we're not going to be far apart on this one. Like whatever it is, I think that's going to be really.
I do think I imagine a lot of our differences are like sitting at the same table, maybe on other sides of the same table, but the same table nonetheless. But the thing I said about the Ground News thing is not just you. It's because that taps into a larger thing with the way people talk about like.
I just want to be clear. I'm not in that. Get your money. As long as you're not like selling cigarettes and vapes, like I don't go get your money. Sell gamer sups or bath water. I don't give a shit.
Yeah, but let me tell you. So that one, I'll just say like, sure. But one area, and this isn't like that serious, but the one part where I was like, okay, this isn't a good critique. When you said I can't talk about David Foster Wallace because he was an asshole.
That's not what I said. That's not what I said.
Well, let me tell you what I heard. Because listen, I have 9 cases of ADHD in one body. So what I remember in watching it was saying. Was using the fact that David Foster Wallace was a prick. Well, actually, here, tell me what you meant, because I want to be completely fair. So, what was the
David critique? Foster Wallace is not a figure of authenticity fighting against it, which is how it was put forward. He is the embodiment in flesh of the postmodern state of late capitalism. The beautiful contradictions, and I like his writing. I have 2 children, so. I have gotten laid at least twice, and I have read Infinite Jest. I
don't know, guys. Now I know you're lying. Up until this point, I trusted you.
I don't really care for it, to be frank. I don't actually like a lot of his writing. I like more his speeches and his essays.
Oh, I'm the same way. I actually like writing about Foster Wallace better than reading.
He has a piece on suicide that is maybe one of the most beautiful pieces ever written on it. Like he really has an extraordinary touch with the lack of connection and the way that these things beautiful. At the same time, he's a horrifying piece of shit. I could say the same thing as like Michael Jackson. Like we can talk about it's a trope. Someone else would come in like, yeah, this happens a lot, but it's not that David Foster Wallace is like what he's putting out there is like a new sincerity. What he's putting out there is proof that all of these things are simply a new aesthetic mask for us to wear. So using David Foster Wallace as an explanation for how postmodernism functions is great. Using him as an explanation of a way to fight it is not. That was the critique.
Okay, yeah. I guess for me, the only reason to like, or the motive to bring up the new sincerity thing is, of course, like that is a way, or was pitched as a way. And again, the reason I went from that to Jameson, I thought that Foster Wallace is a good sort of aesthetic understanding of the vibe of postmodernism. I think some of the examples from Infinite Jest in particular, because to me, and this is maybe like, this is how I think about YouTube videos. I want to make sure there's something in the early part that is visceral and someone can grab onto. Mm-hmm. That's why I thought about Infinite Jest, because to me, the example of the entertainment and the way that they talk about, you know, companies owning years and stuff, that is something that if you've never thought theoretically, or if you're not familiar with dialectics, makes a level of visceral sense, because it's like, oh, I could see that happening. Things are like that now. For me, what I was doing, of course, in my head or my planning and doing it, it's like, okay, here's the vibe. You guys understand the vibe now. This is a description of that vibe. But now let's head over to Duke University and the offices of Frederick Jameson to see about how we analyze this more critically. And I think like bringing up sincerity, I think that I do think.
Well, let's take that first bit, because I think that first bit is kind of the point. If you're going to talk about David Foster Wallace, and as you pointed out, no one reads Infinite Jest. Like, people have not seen the movies based on these things. Like, they're not tolerable. Like, a lot of his shit is flatly not tolerable. What people imagine about David Foster Wallace or know about him is that vibe, right, that you're going for. But he is kind of the embodiment of it. They're not talking about his works, the works he produced, which is kind of postmodern-y as a thing. But the vibe overall is a Catcher in the Rye person. He is a Catcher in the Rye person in common parlance, how people talk about him, that he is standing on the edge of a cliff, that he is, he fought for it and he lost. And it's like, he as a person is actually just the postmodern condition. It isn't that his works have that vibe. And that's why I think that, again, that meta view, that secondary view of separation where we're talking about it from a critical distance is what is necessary in that.
I think I don't get what you mean by that he as a person is the postmodern condition, because when I think about Foster Wallace, and like the first thing that ever made me interested in Foster Wallace was watching interviews with him, and the way that there's a way in which watching David Foster Wallace talk about media and commercialism and stuff like that in the 90s feels crazy now, because it does feel, and not that it was that hard to connect the dots right there, but says some things which feel pretty poignant about the way in which our attention falling into commodified forms of capture, it's going to make us all think less, relate to our own humanity less, and eventually kind of kill us. And something about that, to me, like I don't see how does that make him the embodiment of postmodernism when he seems to be talking about the way in which like commodified entertainment is killing us.
Well, so there's a couple layers there. That quote doesn't do it. It's the fact that he is at a large scale, this distributed network of all of these different types of aesthetic things he puts forward. He is absolutely the same person or the same collection of all sorts of things that do the, you know, buying a gun to kill his lover's husband, also writing these essays, also saying these things, also writing a tome of a book that no one's going to goddamn read, that also isn't really interesting on its own. I don't actually care for, again, I don't care for his writing, but all of these things that he's sort of switching in and out of, his critique at that simple level that is, hey, things are going to get more difficult, we're going to have less attention span than ever, is like, okay, like that's just a thing, but that criticism of the social space in line with everything else is how the nature of the sort of aesthetic layer that we place over ourselves, the performativity and the placement of the multiplicity of existences that Jameson talks about within late capitalism, puts us in a space where each of those things becomes digestible. That thing that he does is a thing that he can sell, and he says it. And again, that's why I think he's a great example. He openly talks about the sellability and the value in what he does. Mm-hmm. Again, he called women in his audience pussy. He was wildly awful and misogynistic, but he knew the value of what he was doing and putting on that face, that setup, that thing in these different consistent sort of places. That to me is like, not that lack of awareness is what we all exist with. I have that. I don't do that awful shit, but I have that same thing because we are in postmodernity. All of us do that. We all are David Foster Wallace is more the point.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. To me, it's still, I think some of the disagreement around that, to me, still feels to come down to, because when you get into it and you're like breaking stuff down, I totally understand. I agree with 90 to 97.3% of it. I just think the difference for me is a lot of like, how do you, what choice and this is the YouTube stuff. It's like, what choice am I going to make? And not that all my choices are good or perfect, to create something that is accessible and grabs people from certain perspectives from a few different viewpoints to get them into the conversation.
Sure.
And I still think that, like, for me, like, that's the function of that. And I think, in a way, I think when I look at like the content you make, right, I think of that as something where, like, I hope that people that get a little bit philosophy pilled via some of my more casual stuff end up, you know, reading Anti-Oedipus with you and your crew. But I think they're really different things. And I think for me, there's just, and that's why, like, doing a 15-minute video on Fredric Jameson in many ways is a bad idea because there's so much one could get into there. But yeah, but I know, I guess I think I'd probably slightly
I have
Foster Wallace. I'm just thinking in real time about it. That's why I'm not a debate person, because I'm a
so like, if let's say and again, I don't want to get to the point. I don't want you to feel like I am criticizing your video. Again, it's a critique of the idea. I'm about to launch into what sounds like a criticizing. I don't like doing that. You're a creator. I'm a creator. We fuck up. I hate watching my own shit, and I don't want to like be that guy. But to go with that, the same examples can be used, and it's just light wording. This is, I think, the reason that I made the critique as I did, and I got to the very end where I was like, hey, here's the thing, and this is what we all do. I am doing this. I kind of try to explain it from that point. But if it's opening with, hey, by the way, David Foster Wallace is seen as this postmodern hero because he's fighting the system. But here are the realities of he is this whole complex person. How people talk about that prior to your video and how normal people talk about it, they go, well, death of the author. That's it. Everyone's death of the, who gives a fuck? It's death of the author. Michael Jackson, I just don't think about it. It's like, yeah, but the unique constellation that is David Foster Wallace was needed to produce the work he made. Managers at Walmart don't make Thriller or Bad. Like, that's the way life works. People have to be in really unique positions, and unique people in a lot of ways make unique works. And that constellation of things as people move is worth noting and caring about. And David Foster Wallace exemplifies that. And it's not just that it's David Foster Wallace, it's you. And that's, I think, where you are David Foster Wallace. You are that thing. You are existing in a position just like Michael, you and I, Brooks, right now are existing in a place where we're kind of putting on a facade, not directly to lie. It's not about lies, but we're putting on a facade as we're on stream because we're part of that same semi-performativity. I'm sure you don't act around your family in the same way. I kind of do. I have mental problems, but that sort of thing we're doing. And then off we go. I may have terrible takes. I have many terrible takes. I have video games I play. I'm not this guy all the time, but it's not that there's a true Brooks sitting here or a true David Foster Wallace. The David Foster Wallace is all of those things, but not brought together. It is all of those things dispersed, as are we all. And if we don't understand that, then we can never get to a proper place of class consciousness where we go, I am a true proletariat. No, you're fucking not. There's no fucking such thing anymore. It's a facade. It's a face someone puts on, like the bourgeois or a capitalist or a poor person or a lefty or whatever it is. What you are is all of these pieces. And we need to find another way to talk about how all of us can write ourselves together inside of this new space that is dissembled and broken in the way that it is.
Yeah.
That is not a terrible way to talk about it to someone who's never read these things before.
It's not. But think about the fact that, like, so that, you're probably talking for a couple minutes there, right? And if I were going to talk about everything you just talked about,
it's like 60 seconds, 70 seconds.
Yeah. No, and that's not a critique at all.
Yeah.
But if I was watching a video breaking that down, like, I think it's
no. I mean, you'd use visuals. I have a 15-minute, 20-minute video going over the virtual and the actual from Deleuze's ontology, and which is nightmarish. And I absolutely nail it by using other examples. And it gets it across. My point is that the video you use, it's genuinely just a handful of language choices and the video works. That's the thing I think that made me, and it's what I kind of say at the end, is like, this isn't you're not someone who doesn't engage with this. It's not like you don't understand this. You're not Abigail just saying shit out of her ass on fucking stream about Nietzsche, who's never fucking probably read anything Nietzsche ever did. Instead, you actually have engaged and tarried with stuff that is way beyond Jameson. Again, the Kierkegaard shit I read is like way beyond what we're talking about. You've tarried with this stuff. And so I would encourage And I would say my critique would be you are absolutely capable of just rewriting so that way it forces people in a direction. And you are in a position because you are you. And I don't want to say the W word, but you have a pedigree, you have a people. And I don't. I'm just some fucking asshole, okay? I don't have a lot of subs. I have a handful of people who watch my streams. But if you take them on a journey, they'll follow. So you don't need that 30 seconds in the same way. They follow you because you're personable, you're more attractive than I am, you're more interesting to watch, you're not quite as academic and weird. I've got my own thing. I know where I sit. I have comments on everything that I do. It's like, purple-haired weirdo, I don't need to listen. It's like, okay, fine. But people will follow you. And so if you just give them a little bit and give them a little bit more room, it's better. I used to have this argument all the time about Mark Fisher. I used to think when I was in my early 30s, I used to go, well, Mark Fisher, I'm not a big fan of, but at least he gets people into Deleuze. I don't believe that anymore because it's bad to lose because he doesn't actually tarry with Deleuze at all. It's bad to lose across the board. And the number of people that that's done damage to and fucked their entire understanding of Deleuze is astonishing to me. And give them a little bit of room, give them a little bit of faith that they'll do it. People who wouldn't, they're not getting there anyway. And the people who would will follow you because, again, you have that kind of following personality and capability. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I'm definitely like, I'm curious as well what people in the chat think of that. Because the way I think about my sort of proposition with the audience, and it's a new thing for me. Like I mentioned this earlier in the stream. I'm taking some time, and it's going to sound so freaking pretentious, but I'm writing up a little like manifesto to structure how I approach making videos from here on out.
We need a new word for that, don't we? Because I've almost said the M word myself, and it sounds awful every time.
Yeah. So, but I do think my like general wager with the audience is sort of, I'm going to think about some stuff out loud that I think is worth you thinking about. And I'm going to keep thinking about these questions and coming at them from different directions. And like, I think that maybe I see what I do slightly differently than what you describe in terms of taking folks with me or whatever. Like, I think I'm a little hesitant to think about things in that precise way, but I get what you were saying and I appreciate, what you're saying in that regard. I do think, God, I had a thought and then it left my brain. Yeah. I think, what do I think? I don't know what I think, Brooks.
Those intros, because you're talking about those intros as that catching moment that you're laying the groundwork, you're framing your 20 minutes, 15 minutes in that intro, and you're going to end up coming back to it at the end. And that's how you write a good piece, beginning to end. And then you figure out how to get someone on that journey. And the ability to write something early on that has enough mystery in it or enough things that a person will get as you go to make that final point, I think is worthwhile when we're talking about something like the nature of how to become emancipatory within capitalism, because that extra little effort where it's, hey, I'm not going to talk down to you, but just so you know, we're starting in a place that isn't what everyone expects and jump in. If you can get them to do that 30 seconds, 60 seconds, a minute, and then carry that through and then have that point at the end, I think you could get there very easily. I believe that.
Now this makes sense to me because and I think that's maybe like the slight difference here is, I think I'm still figuring out how I want to do that and like the balance between getting some of the meaty stuff in while also really practically making sure people watch the thing. And especially, there's a very like economic pressure, right? And people know this, but when you do like the sponsor thing on a video, there's times where it's like, you got to get this many views to get paid the money. And that does 100% form elements of the content. And then one has to do the wager with themselves where it's like, can I do this in a way where I still feel good about the thing I'm making? In my case, normally, yes. But and I think the one thing floating behind all this too for me, and I saw a couple of comments to this regard, is, and this is the tension, right? The way to get into that video that could have been a little more direct would be me directly referencing recent discussions of these things by the guys I hate, but I was just so sick of their voices. So there's like a way in which I could, and like I had the clips lined up for this video. of.
They're not hard to find either.
No,
like,
and I had a
too
document
many.
of them. I had things downloaded, and for me, it was honestly the thought of just like I would rather be a little sloppy and a little on this one than put these guys on screen right now. There's better ways to do it, but this was also a matter of like, again, guys, material conditions, just a deadline. I had to have this video up by a certain date. And I think that was like one of the things there. I gotta wind down in a sec here, but I hope this.
I'm actually having a good time. Damn it.
I know, but I can't, you have this, what's the word I'm looking for? Stream endurance. That I couldn't even think of the word endurance right there.
I just have problems.
I had to reach for the word endurance. But also I have to finish streaming by a certain time today because my kid gets home.
Oh God, yes. Can I ask how old? Because I have a 7-year-old and a 3-year-old.
2.
It's a really fun age.
I like it very much.
It's a really fun age. It teaches you a lot about yourself, doesn't it?
It does. But no, I don't want to like rush you off right now. But I need to kind of.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
But I really appreciate you taking the time to come chat about this. And you know, in general, like I think, listen, even if I don't agree with everything you said, at the end of the day, you took a lot of time to engage in my work, and I appreciate that. And that's time you could have taken.
Well, and I appreciate you having me on. If there was anything that felt, I just want to be very clear because you wrote in a note. There is absolutely no animus or personal anything intended in that video, and I come across intense. I'm a big fucking weird guy in a lot of ways. There's nothing intended personal. It's a critique of the ideas stated, which I do, as I stated, kind of where we have our disagreements. I'm very specific on it, but that was never intended to get personal, and I'm sorry if it seemed to have come across that way. It was not my intention. But the underlying thing I'll say is, as you're figuring it out, do be ready, because I will do it again. Like, it may be that maybe we end up in a place.
One eye open, Brooks says on
no,
the way.
it may be the place where you decide like you're doing videos like this, and these are the onboarding. I'll do the longer 55-minute thing. That's the longer explanation. I'm happy to be that guy that sort of moray eels or whatever attaches. But like the critique of these simplified things, to me, the point for me of philosophy, and I understand a lot of people do this for a living. I don't make enough money to be able to justify saying that at this point for this. But this isn't my like job, but it is a thing I care about, because as people deal with their lives and as they go about it, the ability for us to gain power, potentias, potestas in the Spinoza sense, to eliminate those things that are holding us back. This is how we're able to find ways to actually make change. And as we do things, and before we go, I do want to make sure that we get on the one critique, because I wanted to understand kind of your point on it. The BLM thing, I understand, was a joke, but that stuff.
What was the BLM thing?
Where you said that nothing happened, ultimately.
Oh yeah, I mean, and that too. That comment, I think, touches back on a conversation I'd had with the guest on the show a couple weeks ago. I was talking to like Taylor Lorenz, who made the video that was called like "Somebody's Got to Do It" or "Someone Needs to Do It," the one about KILLING, the president. But I think at least what I was feeling there. I'll say what I was getting at there, and you can tell me how it rubbed you the wrong way. Is that sense in which we feel a historical momentum as if something's going to happen. To be like Bedouin for a second, we feel like the affect of the event coming, and that our subjectivity is being shaped by these things that are happening. But then often the thing gets wrapped up into whatever the dominant culture is at the time, and then nothing happens. Right.
And Jameson would specifically argue that is itself, because that's the postmodern condition.
Oh yeah.
Right.
And that's, yeah.
But to say that nothing happened does a secondary thing. And I get that it's kind of can be a joke, and it's a thing a lot of people I've seen on Let's Say, but to say that makes people look at that and go, well, if that didn't do anything, that's how people feel about it. It becomes an impotence creator, because.
Well, and this is where I think I guess I just like disagree there, in as much as, you know, in that part of the video, I'm not like, so guys, this happened and then nothing happened. I think in that part of the video, I'm kind of like, and then I don't know. It's just, so for me, there's times where I try to like, it's important for me to be like, this is what this thing feels like. But
right.
Again,
but then not reversing that critique. This is the thing through the whole thing. When you're talking about like a large collective action that absolutely did have knock-on effects, absolutely, and I can go through them. that didn't do anything, it immediately makes it an individualist project. Here's how you can fix yourself. The collective action doesn't work. Don't get together. Don't do things of that scale. And it's that activity.
I just don't think a lot of people read that in the video, and I'm happy to be wrong there. So folks,
it's entirely possible they didn't, but I'll say it was said, and it is a thing that, again, in the pastiche of things, as things come together and signs come together, it always is disheartening to me.
Yeah.
Because a lot happened. And
yeah. No. It's a thing I've talked about before on my channel and other ways. And I know I'm not always going to be like, you gotta watch everything I've ever made. But I get what you're saying there. I think I disagree in terms of, I think I was presenting it in a way where it made sense that I was getting at, but I know it's also not fair to say that everyone should understand the intent I have in the way I say it. Two things I want to say for sure. Let's chat again. Let me know.
I'd love to.
Whenever. And then two, God damn it, the next time I talk about some of this stuff, you'll be in the back of my head. So thank you for that.
I would love to engage and tarry on things because, again, as I've said, you have a very good grasp on thinkers. I do not. Like, you mentioned Sartre. I get your jokes, but I don't get your jokes. I don't know if that makes sense. Like, I get your jokes, but I don't like have specific references of books. Like, I don't know enough.
Well, let's at some point pick something we want to talk about. We
would love it. That'd be great.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And thank you for everyone in your audience. And then, guys, if you don't follow Brooks, go to Quarantine Collective, watch some videos, hang out, do that sort of stuff. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hey, guys, that was Brooks from Quarantine Collective. Came on to chat about...
Well, hello. That was lovely, pleasant. Thank God that title was a fucking little weird joke. Jesus. I was nervous. I was like, does he think I'm a hater? I was like, turned out lovely. Very lovely. And I'm glad I'm going to be a annoying thing in the back of his head. It's tough. And again, I have an insane amount of empathy for anyone who's a content creator just in general, because it sucks. Like, if you think back when YouTube first started and they actually started paying money to people used to make pretty fucking good money off YouTube just for getting a handful of, now it's like garbage. It's garbage money. Everything's shit. Everything's broken. No one gets any money doing stuff. So being a content creator, especially after having what happened and breaking out on your own, so you're not part of a larger mothership. I've done this. I've broken out on my own, and not in content creation, but as company, I quit very safe, lucrative corporate jobs to go do my own thing. And I have a lot of empathy for the stress and nightmare that sort of puts on you. But our job, if you care, and I believe he does, is to enable people to gain power socially and within themselves, and doing it in a way that does not help them, doing it in a way that is repressive, unknowingly even, works against that. And it's not an easy thing to... If I made very cynical content, I could do philosophy tube shit. This philosophy tube shit is not hard. All you have to do is like put words on a page and like say them. Hey, Cameron, welcome. I don't think that matters. Like none of that shit matters. No one gives a fuck about anything like that. And philosophy tube is not emancipatory. It creates parasocial relationships at best, but it's repressive in that it creates the categorizations of people in very particular ways. It's anti-revolutionary. It is anti-revolutionary. And I don't think Michael wants to do that. He's never seemed like the type who wants to do that content. And it's the thing that I think he cares about. It's just tough to do as a thing. It's a choice. It's what are you going to do, right? It's the whole thing. So I appreciate that talk. I was very encouraged by him just generally. That was nice. Yeah. Why the hate against Kropotkin? I love mutual aid. Oh, you're talking about someone else. Yeah. What'd you guys think? Huh? Nice talk. Very good. You learned. That was fun. Very productive. Hey, happy day. Happy day. Was it? It's and I do want to say, I give an immense amount of credit to Michael. To be frank, I know how I'm going in there. I know how I'm going in. but I go in weird. But a huge amount of credit. He has no idea who the fuck I am in any way. He's seen a couple of my videos, as he said. But he doesn't know if I'm going in aggro. And for him to also do the thing where it's like generally good, just feeling it out and being safe, like a huge amount of credit. He's a much more established figure than I am. And so he has, I don't know, he could feel like he has, like there's a lot of possibilities of how a person can be weird with that. So a lot of credit to him. A lot of credit to him. That's nice. So good. Yeah, he just put himself on the line. I mean, at this point, I think he realized now, it's like, oh, Bricks doesn't do the forgiving thing or the, well, we'll compromise or the nice talking. I care about these things. And it was kind of fun to watch him make the switch, or at least to me, it felt like he was making the switch of like, all right, well, we'll figure out where we have middle ground, to knowing we're not going to. And then to kind of actually just talk about that was really nice to see. It was really nice to see. I'll introduce figures on my mic for those who are new. This is Max Rebo. When I was a child, very, very young, I think I still have it right here. I was, Star Wars came out, Return of the Jedi, and I went to the theater with my cousin and my dad. I was very, very little. My dad and family were carrying me. The theater we were in was one of the handful in the world that was given these shirts by Lucasfilm that actually were tickets. So you didn't have to stand in line. So they gave them to everyone. I got wrapped in one. My dad kept it for me. My mom and dad kept it for me. And with that, they kept a handful of Star Wars figures, not knowing I would eventually work at Lucasfilm. So that was like a weird thing. So I've kept all my favorite little guys that I find hilarious, because Star Wars is a funny children's show, but that people take it seriously makes me laugh. Because here's Max Rebo, who plays jizz music. I'm not joking. He plays jizz. And she's a jizz singer. That's a real thing. And of course, Jabba's little annoying little guy. And then I also have Millhouse Lego. My son Dexter did a portrait of me of Play-Doh, of like clay, whatever. And then I have, this is Pinhead Lego and the Squid Games guys. So yes, it's jizz music. That's what it's called. It's jizz music. I played jizz music. My son's name is Dexter. Yes. And that is, yes, she is a jizz whaler, which is like the best. George Lucas, great writer. Glup Shido is that is the meme, but I don't think you even need to go that far. I just love the idea of the characters. I get a kick out of it. I find it super, super fun. These are, I just have them. My son likes them here. He talks about them and he talks to them, and I've always just added more, and then just suddenly I have too many. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, that was kind of the day. That was fun. It was wild. What a trip. It's, I think good. It was a good day. That was nice. It makes me happy. It was much better than I thought it would be. God. Well, let's see. So now what I'm doing. I think we'll do a mini break so I can use the restroom, get some water, and I don't know. We'll see what else we can get going. Maybe I'll talk about some Klosowski here. Who knows? Maybe I end today. I don't know. Let me see. Let me see. Actually, you know what would be fun? Okay. You ready for meta? You want to do meta? Let's go meta. Boop, 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 boop. Do, 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 do. Bup, 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 bup. All right. Oh. Maybe too meta? I don't think so. So we'll see. Sunday's going to diagnose this as a debate. So let's see his analysis.
Factually about a thing that the person you're responding to said. That's a gauntlet thrown down, because both of them are calling the other wrong and or possibly a liar, depending on the tone.
He has a piece on suicide that is maybe one of the most beautiful pieces ever written on it. Like he really has an extraordinary touch with the lack of connection and the way that these things.
Brooks is reacting to you now. That's really weird, Brooks. Am I being watched right now? That's kind of weird. I don't like the idea of somebody watching me. Makes me think of like some weird bearded guy in his basement with like painted nails and a Barbie shirt.
Beautiful. At the same time, he's a horrifying piece of shit. I could say the same thing as like Michael Jackson. Like we can talk about it's a trope. Someone else would come in like, yeah, this happens a lot, but it's not that David Foster Wallace is like, what he's putting out there is like a new sincerity. What he's putting out there is proof that all of these things are simply a new aesthetic mask for us to wear. So using David Foster Wallace as an explanation for how postmodernism functions is great. Using him as an explanation of a way to fight it is not. That was the critique.
Okay, yeah. I guess for me, the only reason to like, or the motive to bring up the new sincerity thing is, of course, like.
And here's the thing, Michael, and this is how you know Michael is a sophist. Michael cannot lose. He cannot lose. It is more important for him to appear correct than to get at the truth or to get at a proper or a correct understanding of something. He cannot lose. He has to contrive a way he was actually technically right anyways, or what he was in a gray area where it's sort of okay. He cannot lose. That may actually screw him up a little bit, because if he tries to push this, now the conversation can escalate, and he's made a mistake in the framing of this, because now Brooks isn't beholden to him anymore. Because that tonal shift.
It's so interesting to see this as a debate.
You said now.
It's so interesting to see this as a debate and think about the tactics and the cynical side of this.
Pitched as a way, and again, the reason
it's so interesting to see this as a chess thing.
Foster Wallace is a good sort of aesthetic understanding of the vibe of postmodernism. I think
it's not what he said in the video.
Some of the examples from Infinite Jest in particular, because to me, and this is how I think about.
That's not what he said in the video. He was using Infinite Jest as an example of the condition of postmodernity.
This is true.
Of postmodernism as a pathology, actually.
YouTube videos. I want to make sure there's something in the early part that is visceral and someone can grab onto. That's why I thought about Infinite Jest, because to me, the example of the entertainment and the way that they talk about, companies owning years and stuff, that is something that if you've never thought theoretically, or if you're not familiar with dialectics, makes a level of visceral sense, because it's like, oh, I could see that happening. Things are like that now.
Sunday, when you are done, you should react to Brooks reacting to you. Oh, and I will. Don't worry.
For me, what I was doing, of course, in my head,
we should raid into Sunday.
It's like, okay, here's the vibe.
I think I'm going to do that. As much as I adore the hilarious meta of all of this.
Then Brooks will react to me reacting to him, and then I'll react to him reacting to me reacting to him reacting to me.
We'll go give Sunday some views here. That'll be fun.
We'll have a call.
To Duke University,
but I'm younger, so I'll still be alive.
So as we're about to do that, I just want to say thank all of you for joining, and this will be interesting, and we'll raid into Sunday doing his thing. This will be fun. And I'll send you all on your way. Thank you, Suresh. President Sunday, the Machiavelli style. It's a very different way of thinking about things, and I appreciate it. And I appreciate it. I appreciate it. The modalities of existence in the space is all how we find how we do this. It's necessary. It's necessary. But let's go head over there. Thank you all for joining. If you like what I do, please go to Patreon, patreon.com/DGQC. Give me a membership. Absolutely. The more I can do this full time would be just so great. if you have the ability, absolute memberships and super chats and joining the Discord, discord.gg/DGQC. I appreciate all of you and I love you, and I will see you all